Hey, Food Slayers, this is Michelle from Food Slaying Podcast. I just wanted to make a quick video today because we've got an episode coming up this Friday that is so important and it's all over the news right now, where we're talking about the coronavirus and how that is impacting the global food supply chain. Amidst all of this COVID-19, shelter in place, restaurant shutdowns, grocery store food shortages. It's such a complex issue, and I just wanted to make a quick video because there's just a lot of talk about farmers dumping food, farmers having to till vegetables and beans and cabbage and squash into their fields, and onions just rotting in place, farmers dumping milk, smashing hundreds of thousands of eggs. And it seems counterintuitive, especially because right now we're seeing shortages, right? We're experiencing at the retail level, we're experiencing shortages of food, of wheat, of flour and yeast and meat. We are seeing those food shortages, but what's happening on the flip side, because it's kind of a two-pronged issue, we're also seeing more supply, right? We're seeing a lot of farmers that have all this supply, but they can't do anything with it, and it's really complicated. The food banks are overwhelmed. A lot of farmers who have already established supply chains, they can't just pivot into a different supply chain, right? So if you are a milk farmer and you're supplying milk, say, to the industrial food sector for hospitals, schools, restaurants, and things like that, you can't necessarily pivot very quickly to supply, milk for schools or milk for the grocery store, right? Because there are different processes, different distribution lines, it's all just different. It's difficult to just pivot. So I wanted to just take a look at how the food supply chain works. Basically, it starts up here with food production. It starts with the farmer. It starts with the person who is raising the animal or, growing the vegetable or, whatever the good is that they're producing. It starts with the farmer. And then it goes to the distributor, right? There's the person that takes that produce or that animal or that product and takes it to a distributor where it gets processed, right? So there's where the regulations are and the food cleanliness, and it gets processed into other goods and packaged, right? And then there's the marketing arm of food systems and food distribution where after it's packaged, then it gets marketed to consumers, where consumers can go to their local grocery store and purchase it. And then they take it home and we prepare it and consume it. And then it goes into a waste system or recycling system. The packaging goes into one system. The food obviously is digested and turns into another waste system, which eventually gets back to the land and the farmer to start the cycle all over again. And so that's basically how most food supply chains work. It starts with the farmer, it gets processed, it gets distributed, marketed, it gets to the local grocery store. Then, that's access for us as consumers. We buy it, we prepare it, we feed it to our families, and then it turns into a waste stream. So what's really mostly concerning about what's happening right now as a result of the coronavirus is because people are sheltered in place. They're not going out to restaurants as frequently. So the restaurant industry has completely shut down. Obviously, people are losing their jobs. People aren't going to restaurants. People aren't going to events. Weddings aren't happening. Funerals, are barely happening. Any type of social gathering that was planned before this is now kind of shut down. And so, our consumption of certain products, specifically, this week I'm talking to an onion farmer who has a successful vegetable growing operation. He's a third generation family farmer. It's Oihe Farms, a division of Freuer Farms. I think I'm saying that right. But anyway, Shay Myers is going to get on the podcast with us this week and talk about what we can do, because right now the headlines that we're seeing, coronavirus is upending our global food supply chain. Farmers are dumping milk and dairy products because of the change in demand. There's just no demand. The demand has gone away. It's not that people don't want to eat the food that's being produced. There's a broken chain or a broken link in the food supply chain, in the distribution of that food, in the processing of that food, that makes it difficult for farmers to get this excess into the market to direct to consumer. So that's one of the things that we're going to talk about this week on Food Slain. So if you haven't already checked out my episode on how food secure are you and how the coronavirus is impacting our food supply and our food security and our ability to be resilient through this, because this isn't over. This is just beginning. This is just the beginning of what we're seeing in the food supply chain when it comes to feeding families in America. In fact, I read something recently that was talking about how 80% of American communities rely on the food supply chain, which is staggering. That is staggering, that 80% of communities in America rely on a food supply chain. We rely on the distribution of food, the trucking lines. We rely on the manufacturers. We rely on, our grocery stores and the buyers to be able to procure food so that we have access to it. If you haven't listened to that episode, head on over to foodslain.com and check it out. I talked about it in early March before, the stuff hard. I talked about it in early March before all this started hitting the fan. And here it is coming to pass. And so if food is important to you, which it should be, because we all have to eat, every single one of us needs food to survive in this world. So if you care about food and you care about where your food comes from and you care about the ecological impact of your food, the health impact of your food, and the environmental impact of your food, subscribe to the newsletter so that you get exclusive podcast updates, and you can find that on foodslain.com. And make sure to listen in this week. We've got a lot of really cool guests coming up. So I just want to leave you with that, thinking about how do we solve this problem? How do we, because this isn't the first pandemic that we'll see in the world. There have been pandemics throughout history, and it's important to think about our food security and how we will survive it. I'm sure that we will. I'm hopeful that we will. But the reality is that during this time where it's disrupted, where there is this huge disruption, not just in the food supply chain, but in the economy overall, right? Because people have lost jobs, people are staying home, people aren't bringing in the income that they were just, a month or two ago. It's challenging, especially for people who are in communities where access to food is difficult, or access to fresh food is difficult, or you talk about people who are living below the poverty line. And this isn't a racial issue. This is an economic issue. This is about access to food. It's about, being able to feed your family. It's about being resilient during this time. And there couldn't be a better time to start thinking about your own food security and resilience. And there's certainly no better time to think about how we can support food that is grown right here in the United States, and supporting our farmers, small farms, large farms, people who are providing our food for us. And that's where I'm going to leave this one. So again, listen into the podcast at foodslaying.com, or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And just remember to eat clean, eat healthy, and love your food. And I'll see you on the other side of the plate. Ciao.